Hey, last week we talked about the common mistakes made with HVAC when building new houses. Today we're going to talk about the long awaited video of filters. What type of filters are best? What kind should I get? And the infamous, how often should I change my filter? Well, we're going to talk about all that stuff today here at ProCalcs University. If you like what we're talking about, don't forget to click subscribe, put in comments down below, give us a thumbs up. See you soon. All right, welcome back to ProCalcs University. I'm Tom Platania, your host. And let's get started off with the hat challenge real quick because we got a little bit of a story to tell you about that. Now, last week, I don't know if you got it, but I had the hat Santorini. Everybody find out where Santorini is? That's right, it's in Greece. It's an island off of the coast of Greece. Beautiful, beautiful island. It's probably the most magnificent place that Heather and I went, and all the places that we traveled throughout the about 5.5, 6 months that we traveled overseas. So the kind of the story that goes with Santorini is, we always end up, there's one place or another where we end up having these big dramatic moments, and Santorini was one of them. So when we get to Santorini off the cruise ship, we get off first places, we're VIP, so we get to take this gondola that's up, and you'll see that here in a second. And the gondola is, it's at an angle like this. And they're just small little 6-person carts, and it's just constantly going. They're old, they're rickety. So you walk up into this like cavey looking thing, and you walk up the stairs, and you sit there and wait for the gondola, and you get in, and it brings you all the way to the top. In this area where the cruise ships come in, there's only 2 ways to get up into the top of Santorini: the gondola or the stairs. Okay. Well, I'm going to show you what the stairs look like. And as we stood down at the bottom and we contemplated going up, we said, should we take the stairs? Get our steps in, get that good cardio going, huh? Or should we take the gondola? Well, I'm going to let you take a look at this picture, and you kind of let me know what your initial thoughts are for doing this. So yes, there are the infamous stairs in Santorini, Greece. So as we stood way down here, and see the cruise ship brings you, you have little ferry boats that come in, and they drop you off here, and you get to stand here, and you get to contemplate gondola, stairs. Okay, well, looking at it from all the way at the bottom, it's very intimidating. And yes, there were some people that took the stairs, younger, and even some really good fit people. They probably regretted it when they got it at the top. But so we get there. There was no line. We go up in the gondola. We have a private tour throughout the day. It takes us all over Santorini. We went into like a winery and had lunch. Just absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous views. So now at the end of the day, we're coming back. We've been walking around in 102 degree heat in Santorini. Yeah, it was bad there, temperature-wise. Beautiful, some breezes in nice places. So we get back there, and we'll get downtown, and we're ready to go walk back to the gondola. All right? Hey, no waiting to go up the gondola. Most likely won't be that big of a deal. So we get in there, and we find out that the line to get on the gondola is over 2.5 hours long. All right? So we're like, okay, do we wait 2.5 hours in 102 degree heat with very little shade anywhere? Or do we take a chance and go down the stairs? It's down the stairs. How difficult could it be? Yeah, we could ask ourselves that question now. But so we start down the stairs, and this is, now obviously we're way up here. This is where you're entering the stairway. So here's your walkway up here. Walkway up here, and then you walk down, and this is where you actually get to like the stair portion of it. All right. This is what the actual stairs look like. Okay. So the stairs are fairly long. They're probably about 2.5, 3 feet deep. The problem is they also have donkeys that take people from the bottom all the way to the top. And over years and years and years of the donkeys walking on this, all these big rocks that this step is made of are worn down. They're smooth. Well, we didn't expect that. So after a very long day, Heather, who always wears flip-flops, it could be 30 degrees outside and the woman would have flip-flops on. Okay, God bless her soul. So she's got flip-flops on and I have my Skechers slip-ins, kind of like a sneaker boat shoe almost. we don't even get 12 foot down the stairs and my poor wife starts slipping, because flip-flops that are worn a lot on top of smooth rocks does not a good combination make. So she had a little slip, but then probably 20 feet in, she fell so bad she fell onto her knees and cut her knees up. I'm like, do we turn around? Do we go back in and wait? I'm like, all right, let's adjust. We should have turned around and walked back up, but hindsight 2020. So we start a little bit more. She falls again. I'm like, okay, that's it. I give her, she takes her flip-flops off and I give her my boat shoes. Okay, because I wasn't slipping. We were okay. Well, I had socks on, so I gave her my boat shoes, and then I started stupidly, not even thinking about it. Okay, let me walk down the stairs with my socks on. So she can have the boat shoes, so she's okay, that she's got a grip, she doesn't fall and hurt herself anymore. Well, the shoes worked for her, but the socks didn't work for me. So after not only like 4 or 5 steps, it was even worse than the flip-flops. So I take the socks off. Now I'm 100% barefoot walking down by then it was probably 1.3 miles of this stairway, walking down just so my wife could have shoes on and not have to be slipping and falling. Plus I was holding her hand and we were walking down the stairway. But on top of this, remember I said that there's donkeys that go up and down this thing constantly? Well, what do donkeys do as they're walking back up? Yeah, that's right. All over the steps. So it was just one of those nightmare days. It took us hours to get down. Yes, and technically we beat the gondola down, because if we had waited 2.5 hours to get to the gondola, and then the time, it probably would have been closer to 3 hours, and we made it down before that, which hindsight, it's like, okay, it probably would have been better off, but we were battered and bruised. I had slipped a couple times when I had the socks on, but nothing as bad as my wife. So we get down to the bottom and we are just drenched. She's still got my boat shoes on. I'm walking barefoot. When we get down to a flat surface, she puts her flip-flops on. I put my boat shoes back on, but it was just one of those things where bad decisions just turned into a worse situation. But the view, as you can see, the view is absolutely gorgeous. And if you wear the right shoes, you can nicely walk down the stairs. You can walk up the stairs. It's tough. It's 1.5 miles. But as you can see from that previous video, they're steep. They're no joke. It's 800 and some steps. But go ahead and look it up and you'll see some really fun stuff on that. So today, you see the hat challenge today. Obviously, you can tell where it is. But here's the key is I want you to find out, research, why is Iceland called Iceland? That was a big fun fact that we learned when we went there. It took a little tour bus out to the geysers, and there was a waterfall that was absolutely gorgeous. So we had a great time. But anyway, let's get into the topic of the video today. And today we're talking about filters and what type of filters there are, what's the best one for you, how to know what's right for you, how to know what's wrong. But also the big question that I hear a lot from everybody is, when do I change my filter? Okay, when do I change it? We're going to get into all that stuff today. So let's start off with our first thing. Let's start talking about the different types of filters. This one right here is your 50-cent cheap. In the industry, we call these baseball filters. And we call them that because, well, that's in a joking sense of the term, that's about all they catch when it comes to dust particles. You probably get them for $1 at your local store. They're cheap. they're really not worth anything. The only time I would ever use a filter like this in my home is if you remember from my previous videos, I talked about having just an inexpensive filter in the main return grill so that none of your ductwork gets as dirty, but then having the really good filter at the air handler directly. That's the only time I would ever use something like this. Yeah, it's a little more costly to buy them overall and keep maintaining them, but if you want indoor air quality and you want it the best it can be, that's the way to do it. Now, these are just made of a inexpensive mesh. They're typically 1 inch thick, and that's it. You just stay away from these. The next filter is a pleated filter. Now, these ones here that we're looking at are typically a 1 inch size. You can get them in 2 inch and 4 inch. Now, the pleated, the benefit is the material of the pleat is a little bit better, so it captures a lot more particles. Also, because this one is slightly pleated, it has a little bit more surface area than a flat one, so it's going to catch a little bit more particles, which is helpful. And we'll get into, in just a minute, what filters and what they capture as far as how much particles. The next one that we have is a little bit thicker pleated filter. This one be about 3 to 4 inches thick. As you can see, it's more of an accordion style, so you have a lot more layers in and out. This again is going to capture a lot more particles because it is accordion style. So when you stretch it on out, you may end up with a 20-25 foot long of flat surface area. So bunching that up helps to have more surface area in a smaller space like that. And this will capture more particles. And most of the time, the materials that they use for this are a little bit higher quality. So where they're thinner, they're going to capture more of those dust particles that you'd be concerned about. Okay, next one that we have is getting into what's called a HEPA filter. HEPA filters are things that are used in high-end, like hospitals. You can use them in your homes for smaller things. You can use it in your air conditioning system. However, there's big ifs with these things, and we're going to talk about them in a minute as to why you can and can't use some of these filtrations. Typically, a HEPA filter can't be used in a regular residential system if all of the air is being pulled through that HEPA filter because it's too restrictive. There are systems where you will have the HEPA filter, but it partially takes some of the air to filtration it. So after a period of time, most of the air will go through there, but not all at one time because it is so restrictive. Okay. Another type of filter that you have is an electronic filter. Now, you have to be careful of where you have these. If you're in South Florida, I typically recommend them against them, or if you're in a highly corrosive area, because they don't hold up well. And it's not this brand, it's just a picture that I got. It's brands in general that over the years, they end up corroding and you have a lot more problems with them. So what they have is inside is they have, I don't know, it's like it almost looks like kind of like your stove, the little gas burners almost that are in there, but not as thick. And what happens is as the air travels across here, it becomes charged. And then the little fins inside are the opposite charge. So positive and then negative. And what happens is the dust particles that attract, opposites attract, they attract to those fins and help capture it. And then obviously it has to be cleaned out. Now this part right here that you see is kind of like what you would call a pre-filter as well. So it's going to capture some stuff. It's going to charge the things and then negatively charge and attract. So inside the electronic filter. Now these aren't as restrictive, but it's this area here that can make the determination of the restriction. So whether we can use it or not. All right, so here what I want to go over is this is how most filters are rated with a MERV rating. Now when you get into some of the higher end filters, they don't, because like an electronic filter, it doesn't necessarily have the MERV rating because of the type of filtration that it's using. But when you're looking at the different filters, you're going to look at the different MERV options, one being pretty much nothing. And you can see what particles here, you can see that we're trying to capture. 0.3 is kind of the norm. Anything below that you can capture is that much more of a benefit to you, because that's where the really, really detailed, nasty stuff. If you got high end allergies, That's the stuff you got to focus on. Is nothing above 3. I mean, yeah, it's going to bother you, but it's the stuff that's below 0.3 that's really the nuisance for you if you have an allergy problem. Now, most of your filters that you'll get in the store will range in this 5 to 13 area. And you're typically going to have to find that in a pleated filter. So we showed you that. Now, you get those at Home Depot. You can get them at Lowe's. You can get them online at Amazon. You can get them all over the place. In fact, we have some different brands. If you go to our shop on procalcs.net, we have a shop, and you click on that, and there's all kinds of different things in there that will help you with those things. Hey, if you like what we're talking about today, or you have any questions or comments about filters, go ahead and put it in the comments below. Go ahead and smash that like button, and let us know what other topics you'd like us to talk about. Now, for this, remember I said I was going to start doing books for this Perfect Comfort series. So there is a ton more information on filters that I'm not going to be able to talk about today, but it's going to be in the book. Okay, books are, I thought I was going to start off with like a 20-page book, but I found that there was just so much more additional information I wanted to be able to give people. So we got books that are fairly decent size, going close to 70 to 100 pages of additional information to really help you. And there's going to be links down below to the book that you can go to Amazon and go ahead and purchase those. And actually, we have the whole series. So I'm going to be doing books on the entire series of the Perfect Home Comfort. So here you can see the different filters. Now, as you get into the higher MERV values, here's where the problem comes into play, is how much that filter restricts the air. Because if I'm cleaning the air better, that means I have to restrict the air more to capture the particles. And the smaller the particles that I want to capture, the better the filter has to be, and the more air I'm going to slow down. And it's just kind of a vicious cycle. So we have to be careful of what type of filter we put in the system. You can't just put a filter in and go with a better and better and better filter unless you know that your system is properly designed. And I'm going to show you some of that here in just a second. So we can look at that. Now let's go to the next. Now here is where we talk about, so we showed you those MERV ratings, okay? And what's important, and we look at this when we're designing a system, is we need to know what other possible things in the system, even after we're designing it, could someone do to cause a greater restriction. Like the air conditioning contractor not installing the ductwork exactly how we have it laid out, or running these because he doesn't want to cut duct and it's easier for him. We see this all the time where, they'll go up there with a box of 6-inch flex duct and they really only need like 10 foot, but because they're lazy and they don't want it, they'll just take the whole box, clip one end to one side, one end to the other. Now you got 25 foot of duct and you only needed 10. See that all the time. So unless they do things like that cause additional restrictions that we can't account for, we do account for the homeowner being able to put a better filter in without causing any major issues. And what we're talking about is, you can see the MERV rating right here. So as we get down to a better MERV rating, you can see what the restriction is. And you don't need to know the details of, unless you want to, I'm going to talk about them in the book, the inches of water column and what that means. But just look at the number. The smaller the number, the less restrictive it is, okay? And look at when we get all the way into these MERV filters, how restrictive they are. Well, we have to account for this when we're designing, because if you put in this filter in the air conditioning system, it's like putting a brick wall in front of your air handler. It's going to try to pull air. It's not going to. Then it's going to try to pull air from any gap, crack, or crevice, which most likely is going to be in the attic or something. So it's going to be pulling in all kinds of stuff. It's still not going to be able to pull enough air. And what's going to happen? The motor's going to burn out. Or if it's a variable speed air handler, variable speed air handlers are designed to continue to ramp up in RPMs to achieve the static pressure that they're supposed to be at. Well, if you've ever heard an air handler that's on really, really high RPMs just because it's trying to do this, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, these things could scream, and it's all because they're restricted in the return, and they're trying to pull, and they're speeding up and they're speeding up and they're speeding up to get to the desired CFMs that they're supposed to be at. I mean, they may be going 3, 4, 5 times faster than they need to achieve it. And that what'll happen? The motor will burn out. So you got to be careful of these things. You can't just put one in. There's a tool that we're going to show to you here, but if you have a really good air conditioning company, they should be able to come out with the proper tools, magnehelic gauge or manometer, and be able to determine what the static pressure is on your unit, supply side and return side separate, and then putting those numbers together. And the reason I say separate is because, we want to design for, let's say, a 1.0 total static pressure, let's say. Well, everything we have, every 90, every turn, every twist, every grill, every vent, everything has got a certain restriction to it. So if I do with that one and then I start taking off all these other little restrictions, I need to be able to get down to nothing less than a 0.06 on the system before it then becomes an issue. So if I start with a 1.0 and I put this filter in that's a 0.9, I've lost everything. Now I have no leeway at all. So we want to design. So we designed for a little bit more available pressure. So when you do decide to put a MERV 13, 14, or 15 in, that there's a good chance, unless your HVAC company did something really, really dumb, that you should be in good shape. So I just wanted to show you. Now I want to show you how the higher static pressure actually affects the airflow on the unit. Let's look at this. Okay, so here you can see that a little blurry. So here we have, this is just a train air handler, and you could see if I have a 0.1 static pressure on medium speed, let's say, I should be able to put out 1704 CFMs at that static pressure. Now, if I'm at 208 volt, I'm only going to put out 14. Let's use the 208 because that's typically where we sit. So this unit has the capability at 0.1 static pressure of 1465 CFMs. Now look what happens when I go to a 0.7. When I restrict it that much, the unit is only capable of 1289 CFMs now. I've cut almost 200 CFMs, 180 CFMs off that just because of the additional static pressure. And you can see even bigger difference at 230. I go from 1704 all the way to 1321. That's 400 CFMs. That's huge. So yes, these are some of the issues that you come across when you just put a filter in. So having your HVAC guy come in, not doing an evaluation of the pressure in your system, and then just recommending a better filter could be a sign for disaster. And he may put the filter in and not touch anything else. And now you start seeing your electric bill go up. You start seeing actually worse indoor air quality because the filter's so restrictive, the unit's pulling air from other places on the opposite side of the filter. So it's important to know these things. Okay, so here's another thing. We'll get back to the filters in just a second, but here's another thing that people use as an added value to the filter, the UV lights. Now there's all kinds of speculation out there about UV lights, and I'm sure that I'm going to have a lot of people that tell me that they disagree with my opinion. Yeah, you know what? It's my opinion. And I've been doing this for a little while, and my opinion and all the stats that I've read and all the research and all the teachings that have been brought to me, the standard UV light, as you see here, and it could have two lights. There's all different kinds. But the air is going past this UV light at 400 to 1,000 feet per minute. That's fast. And these standard UV lights are not able to clean the air as it's going past because it goes past too fast. Now, back to the inverter systems and letting your air conditioner run longer and variable speed. If we can take that air and let it pass over that UV light enough times, it'll help, but that's not what it's designed for. The standard UV light, which you see here, you have an A coil, and here's the inside of the A coil with the UV light. And then over here is a UV light on top of the A coil. Well, let's start with the purpose. What's the purpose of a UV light? It's to help sanitize the area around it. Okay? Well, when we're looking at an air handler, your typical air handler, there are some air handlers that are slightly different, but let's use this air handler here. Here's your blower. It's pulling air this way up through the filter. So it's going on, if you look at this coil over here, it's going from the inside here and blowing out this way. So that means if my filter doesn't do a good job and the air is flowing through here, that means my air and my dust particles are going to hit this side of the coil. Now, are we going to get some to go through? Yes. Not a lot, but we are going to get some. And this coil is wet, especially if you're in a humid area. If you're not in a humid area, you're still going to have a little bit of condensation, not much though. But it's going to get trapped on there. So the purpose of having the UV light here is that as those particles and stuff are sitting, that UV light has time to eradicate them and to clean and disinfect that area, as opposed to being on the top here, where most of your particles are already going to be captured and sitting on the inside. So if you put the UV light at the top here, you're shining on the coil, yes, but you're not shining on the part of the coil that really needs it. Now, in some air handlers, which it's opposite, where the air is actually going to be coming across this way, then yes, you would want to put your UV light on the outside, shining on this side, because that's where the initial particles and mites and bacteria and stuff are going to trap. But on the other side, if the air is coming from the bottom, in my opinion, it's just not worth it. Get it on the inside. The other part is it's going to help to keep your drain pan clean. Well, drain pan is one of the biggest issues we have with units overflowing. The drain pan gets clogged. It wasn't properly cleaned by the maintenance people. It fills up. We don't have the right float switch that shuts the unit off so it doesn't leak over to your house. And anybody watching this that has an air handler in the attic or on the floor and it's overflowed, it leaves a pretty big mess, especially if it's in the attic. You know, you got ceilings falling down. I've seen all kinds of crazy stuff. So the point is you got to be careful about that. So let's go back to UV lights. Let's go back to the filters. So we're talking about the different filters and what's best for you. The thing you have to be careful about is where is it going to be located? Now, there are some good filters out there from different manufacturers, Trane, Lennox, that they have some really hybrid units that they use. And those are all amazing. Just because I didn't talk about them here, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. And I'm going to put a lot of this in my book that has all the different things, so this way you have more information. But the key is educating yourself about your lifestyle too. If you don't have any pets, then okay, we don't need to focus on a filter that gets rid of pet dander and whatnot. Okay, we don't smoke. Okay, great. But what do we want? So it all depends. Like here we have lead dust, flour, auto fumes, welding fumes. I mean, I don't know if you'd have that stuff inside your house, but this is typically when you get into the 11 to 14, you probably have difficulty getting a 14, but you might be able to get stuff in these. This typically ends up being a good area, but you need to make sure that everything is set up properly. You know, if you get into the higher end of this and the lower end of this, bacteria, smoke, sneezes, flus. I mean, this is a real good area, but not everybody's air conditioning system is going to be able to handle a filter like this. We want to stay away from HEPA in residential unless you have an area that has bypass ducting. We'll talk about that in the book. These are the best places to have stuff like this going. So again, just a quick rundown of the different filters. Let me make sure I didn't. Time. We talked about time. When to filter. This is one of the biggest things. So the cheaper the filter, typically the more frequently you're going to have to replace it. Okay. So if you have the baseball filter, you may be able to go 30 days and you got to change it. And the higher the MERV rating, typically the longer the filter can go. And because it's got more surface area, remember the accordion, it's got more surface area. So, and again, rules of thumb, because everybody's house is different. If you're in and out of the house a lot more, if you leave the windows open more, if you do a lot of more hobbies and crafts in your home, if you have kids, if you don't have kids, all this stuff has 100% to do with how often to change the filter. So you could have like a baseball filter, which is 30 days. Your MERV 15 through or 5 through 12, maybe 60 to 90 days. Probably closer to the end. If you're going with a MERV 13 to 16, maybe 60 to 90 days, you can go without changing it. Some of these filters, these big 4-inch pleated ones, actually say you can go almost a year without replacing it, or the electronic filters being cleaned twice a year or something like that. Now it's a guesstimate, and there is a rumor out there that people say, well, if you let the filter get just a little more dirty, the dirtier it gets, the better it traps dust and particles. But yeah, in theory, it makes sense. But the problem is now you're also restricting the air handler some, causing the air handler to have to ramp up and use more energy by restricting it too much. So the thing is just test yourself. Look at the filter at a certain point in time and see what it looks like. If you see that it looks like it's starting to get the dark grayish tint, you know you're getting dirty. But there's a surefire way for you geeks out there using a manometer. And a manometer, we're going to have this in the link below, and it's going to be on our website. You can take a look at it. It actually has a device where you check the pressure outside of the filter. And so let's say the filter's in the wall, in the side of your wall in your hallway. Obviously, if you check the pressure on the outside, it's probably going to come to 0. And then if you stick the tube inside the filter or inside the other side of the filter, it's going to tell you what the pressure is inside the other side of the filter. And then you just subtract those two, and that'll tell you exactly what your restriction is on the filter. So if you set something up like that, like have a little insert that you can seal, and when you put a brand new filter in, stick the probe in, check what the pressure difference is between the two. Okay, let's say it starts at a 0.2 or 0.02, and now a month goes by, I slip it in and it's 0.025, okay, and then 30 days, 60 days goes by, I stick it in again, it's now I can find that sweet spot as to when, for my house, exactly when's the best time. Some other things out there is there's actually air conditioning systems and thermostats that have sensors on them now that can tell you automatically when it's time to change that filter. Those are really nice. You might want to look into getting those. It's got that basically is doing what I'm talking about with the manometer, checking the pressure differential across the filter to let you know when the best time to change the filter is. So you want to look at those, but it all varies. There's so many variables in there. But if a filter price of a filter where you may end up buying 2 or 3 more filters a year because you're just putting it on a constant schedule of every 60 days, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you need to be a little bit more frugal and you need to better understand, taking a look at it, checking it, and use the little. I think the little manometer is like $39. You buy one of those, it might save you 50 filters down the years. So that's a good part of that. I know I probably missed some stuff. The video's already gone too long. But don't forget the hat challenge. And I'm going to put a lot more information in the book about the filters. Don't forget to smash the like button. Give us a thumbs up. If you have any comments about it, if there's something you don't like about these videos, something you wish we did, something you wish I didn't do, hey, I'm trying to make these better for you so that you want to watch them. All right, so give us a holler. And remember, you can teach the right person anything. You can't teach the wrong person anything. Are you the right person?